I've told parts of this story to a few people in my life, but this is the first time I'm laying it out start to finish. I'm 35 now. What I am about to talk about happened when I was 24 back in the fall of 2013 on a backpacking trip in the southern Appalachian. At the time, I thought of myself as a halfway serious hiker. I wasn't some ultra-light through-hiking legend, but I had a decent pack, decent legs, and enough trips under my belt to think I knew what was out there. Bears, coyotes, snakes, people occasionally. I did not believe in Bigfoot. I thought stories like that were just local color and campfire fuel. After that trip, I stopped laughing at those stories. I don't know if what we saw fits the standard Bigfoot template. And honestly, I don't care what label someone wants to put on it. I just know we had something big, hairy, and very aware of us moving around our camp for days. And that what it did with our voices has stayed with me in a way I can't shake. There were 4 of us on that trip. Me, my younger brother Nate, our friend Chris, and Chris's girlfriend Lily. We were all mid-20s except Nate, who was 22. We lived in different places by then, but we'd grown up in the same small town and had been messing around in the woods together since we were kids. This trip was supposed to be a reunion of sorts. The plan was simple on paper. We'd meet at a trailhead in North Carolina, hike a 4-day loop that used a section of the Appalachian Trail, hit a couple of balds and ridgelines we'd seen in photos, then come back out where we started. It wasn't some epic thru-hike, roughly 40 meters total. Enough to feel like we'd done something, not enough to be insane. We met at the trailhead on a Thursday morning. The lot was half full, mostly dusty suburbs without stickers and a couple of trucks. The air was that kind of cold you only get in the mountains in October. Sharp, but not brutal, with just enough moisture to make your breath hang. The trees were in full color, but past the peak. The reds had dulled, the golds had that faded look like old paper. It had rained a couple of days before, so the ground was damp and smelled like wet leaves and earth. Good hiking weather. No thunderstorms in the forecast, just chilly nights. Before we even stepped onto the trail, some old guy at the bulletin board made a comment that I think about all the time now. He was flipping through the posted notices, bear warnings, trail maintenance updates, that kind of thing. While we were doing last-minute pack adjustments and joking around, he had on a faded camo jacket and rubber boots like he'd just come out of a field, and he looked over at us and said, "Y'all doing the loop?" We said we were, and he nodded and said, "Stay together up there. You hear Woodburger's been active." I thought he was just messing with the city kids. Chris laughed and said something like, "Oh yeah, the big hairy guy." The old man didn't laugh. He just kind of squinted at us, then tapped one of the laminated pages with his finger. It was a missing person flyer from a couple of months earlier. Solo hiker. Male, 39. Last seen heading up the same general direction we were going. Folks say bear, the old man said. Could be. But there's things in these hills that don't show up in the pamphlets. Don't go chasing voices and don't leave nobody alone at night. That's all. Then he just walked back to his truck and pulled out. We made fun of it at the time. I remember Nate doing a bad southern accent on the trail like, "Don't go chasing voices now," and Chris snorting. But I also remember Lily glancing back toward the parking lot once or twice like she wanted to see if the old man was still watching us. He wasn't. He was gone. It was one of those moments you don't flag as important until later. The first day was what you'd expect. A steady climb, switchbacks, that typical damp Appalachian forest where the undergrowth is thick and the rhododendron tunnels make you feel like you're walking through a green hallway. The trail was muddy in places, and we passed a couple of day hikers coming down, but otherwise it was quiet. We had our usual trail talk, jobs, relationships, stupid stories from high school. There was an easy rhythm to it. We made it to a ridge around mid-afternoon where the trees opened up enough to give us a view of rolling hills stacked up all the way to the horizon. The kind of view that makes the effort worth it. We took the obligatory group photos, ate some trail mix, and kept heading toward a designated campsite that was marked on the map next to a spring. That's where we found the first thing that felt off, although I didn't admit it at the time. Just before the campsite, the trail dropped into a little saddle. The soil there was dark and stayed damp because it didn't get much sun. Right in the middle of the trail, in a patch of thin mud, there was a footprint, one clear single print like someone had stepped there and then vanished. I'm not going to be dramatic and say it was perfect like a plaster cast, but it was clear enough. Toes, ball, heel, bare, no tread pattern, no boot lace impressions, bare skin. The weird part was the size and the depth. The print was longer than my boot by a good 3 in, and I wear a size 11. It was also sunk deeper into the mud than any of our prints, and we all had 30+ pounds on our backs. We stopped and stared at it, and the jokes died for a second. Could be someone barefoot hiking? Lily said, but she didn't sound convinced. I've seen those guys in Virum-2 shoes and barefoot running sandals. This looked like someone had just walked through without anything on their feet. The toes were spilled, not neat and straight like a person who wears shoes all the time. Nate crouched over it, and I could see the moment where he wanted to say what we were all thinking, but didn't want to say first. That's big. He finally muttered like that's not. He cut himself off and stood up, brushing his hands on his shorts. Whatever. Could be distorted. Could be 2 prints overlapping. We're not trackers. Chris took a photo with his phone and made some comment about evidence for our Bigfoot, and we moved on. Still, I remember the way we naturally closed ranks after that. We had been spread out along the trail, but now we were walking closer, almost shoulder to shoulder in the narrow sections. It was subtle, but I feel like the forest noticed. The air felt thicker after that, heavier. The campsite that first night was a small clearing just off the main trail. There was a metal fire ring, a few flat tent pads, and a narrow path leading downhill to a spring. The sun went down fast behind the ridge and the temperature dropped with it. We got camp set up, got water, cooked our freeze-dried meals, all the usual routine. There was a damp chill that seeped into everything once we stopped moving. We got a good fire going, and that helped. When we're together, we tend to talk too loud and laugh too much. And that night was no different. At first, the footprint became a running joke. Every snap in the dark was the wood booger. Every gust of wind was Sasquatch breathing down your neck. When we hung the bear bag, Chris yelled, "Better not eat our food." Big guy, at the trees, around 9 or so, the energy shifted. The jokes trickled off. We were sitting closer to the fire. I remember looking up and realizing how dark it was beyond the small circle of light from the flames. There was no moon yet, just a pattern of black tree trunks and branches blotting out the stars. The forest felt close and watchful. You get that feeling sometimes in the woods where the background noise does something strange. It's not that it goes silent exactly. It's that the normal sounds, the crickets, the little rustles, the distant trickle of the spring seem to flatten out into a single constant hum. And anything that breaks that hum feels too sharp. We heard the first knock sometime after that. It was a single solid crack from somewhere out, in the dark, not a branch snapping as it fell. Not the random noise of a squirrel. This was louder and more deliberate. It sounded music like someone had taken a thick branch and swung it hard against a tree trunk. The sound echoed down the hollow. All of us froze. The fire popped. Chris said, "What was that?" Too quickly, like he wanted to get the words out before his brain could register them. "Could be a branch falling," I said. But it wasn't. We all knew it. A couple of minutes later, there were 2 more knocks. Not right together, but spaced out. One, then another from what sounded like a slightly different direction. It did not sound close, but it was clear. It gave the impression of something moving around us at a distance, hitting trees as it went, like a person tapping a cane on a sidewalk. That's when Lily told us about the wood knocks. She was the only one who had ever been deep into the Bigfoot rabbit hole. She listened to podcasts and had watched all those low-budget documentaries where grainy footage of something in the trees gets replayed 15 times. She said that people who went out squatching would knock on trees and listen for responses, and that these things, whatever they were, would sometimes knock back. It's supposed to be how they communicate, she said. Or maybe how they let each other know where they are. We had another round of "Oh great" and "totally normal," but the mood had changed. We put more wood on the fire and sat there listening, trying to pretend we weren't listening. There were 3 more knocks over the next half hour. Each one seemed to come from a different angle. It was like someone walking a big circle around our campsite, staying out at maybe a couple of 100 yards. I kept telling myself it was just trees popping in the cold or one of those weird forest acoustic illusions where a small sound gets amplified. But the pattern was wrong. There was a rhythm to it I couldn't explain away. We decided to turn in a little after 10. Nobody wanted to say it, but we all felt like being zipped into tents and not sitting out in the open anymore. Nate and I shared one tent. Chris and Lily shared the other. The fire burned down to coals while we changed into dry layers and slid into our bags. The nylon walls of the tents made the darkness even more absolute. I lay there for a while, listening to the night sounds, the spring gurgling down the hill, the occasional rustle of leaves, the distant creak of trees shifting. Sometime later, could have been an hour, could have been 3, I woke up to the sound of something big moving through the woods. If you've spent any time in the forest, you know how loud even a small animal can be in dry leaves. A squirrel can sound like a bear, but this was different. The weight of it came through in the sound, heavy deliberate steps. You could feel it as much as hear it. Step, pause, step. A slow, careful walking pattern. It was uphill from us above the tents, maybe 20 or 30 yards away. At first, I stared at the tent ceiling, holding my breath. Nate's breathing next to me was quick and shallow. I realized he was awake, too. The steps came closer, then stopped. The night pressed in. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. There was a faint musky smell on the air that hadn't been there before. Not quite skunk, not quite sweat, something animal and earthy and strong. After a long pause, the steps resumed, moving laterally now, sliding down slope, circling us. Whatever it was trying to be quiet, but the lay of the land gave it away. Every few steps, there would be a soft scrape of dirt, a crunch of leaves, the light clack of a loose rock. At one point, it got so close I could hear its breathing. That's the part that still gets to me. It wasn't a snort or a huff like a deer. It was a slow, deep inhale and exhale, not labored, not like it was tired from walking, just steady, controlled breaths. In, out, in, out. You don't realize how distinct that sound is until you hear it in the dark, when you know you should be hearing it. It stopped again and our tent zipper whispered, just a little as if the slight pressure of the night air shifted the fabric. I had an irrational vivid picture in my head of a hand pressing music in on the tent wall testing it. If that had actually happened, if I had seen fingers or anything pushing the fabric from the outside, I think I might have screamed, but the tent didn't move. Whatever was out there just stood for a while, breathing, then started walking again down past us toward the spring. We heard a splash like something stepping into shallow water, then a big slurp like someone sucking water through pursed lips. It went on for a while, drinking. Occasionally, there was the faint clink of stone like it was shifting rocks in the stream. Then the steps came back up past camp and faded into the trees on the other side. No one slept much after that. In the morning, we did what you do after a night like that. We pretended we were fine. We made coffee and oatmeal and we cracked jokes about our friend the bear because none of us wanted to say. I think something walked around our camp on 2 legs last night. When we went down to the spring, we saw tracks in the mud there. The ground was wet, but not as clear as the other spot on the trail. Still, you could see the shape. Big, wide, bare prints that didn't match the tread of any of our boots. Next to them were smaller depressions that looked like knuckles, or fingers music had pressed into the mud for balance when it leaned down to drink. Lily kept taking photos. If this is a bear, it's walking like a person, she said quietly. Nobody answered. A part of me wanted to pack outright then, but we'd only just started the loop. It would mean giving up the trip we'd all planned months for, and you don't want to be the one who overreacts and ruins everyone's time. So, we all did that thing where we collectively decide it's not that bad. We told ourselves it was a black bear, even though the tracks really didn't look like a bear's. We told ourselves it was gone now, that if it wanted to mess with us, it already would have. We decided to keep going, but stay closer together, make a little more noise on the trail, and be smart about camp. Day 2 was supposed to be our longest mileage day. We had about 13 miles to cover with a climb up to a bald where we'd camp. According to the map, the morning hiking actually felt pretty good. We had that mix of unease and denial that makes you extra alert but also stubborn. We kept up a steady conversation. We sang stupid songs. We made sure no one fell too far behind. The woods were beautiful in that old mountain way. Thick moss on rocks, fallen logs rotting into the ground, the occasional glimpse of a long tree choked hollow dropping away beside the trail. I started noticing little things off to the side of the trail that I would have ignored before. Sticks leaned together against a tree in a crude teepee shape. Rocks stacked into small cars where there was no obvious reason to mark anything. At one point, we passed a sapling that had been bent down and pinned under a heavier branch in a way that didn't look accidental. I'd seen deer rubs and bear claw marks on trees' music before. This looked different, more intentional. It gave me the same feeling you get when you see a do not enter sign on a road and suddenly realize you've been driving the wrong way. Around midday, we stopped at a little overlook where the trees parted enough to give a view of a ravine and the opposite slope. While we were there, I had my first visual. I still don't know how to talk about it without sounding like I'm adding details for drama, but I'll just describe it the way it happened. I had walked a few yards away from the others to pee behind some bushes. When I finished, I was standing there looking across at the far slope. It was mostly hardwoods, bare trunks spaced out with leaf litter between. Nothing dense, the kind of hillside where you can see pretty clearly for a good distance. I was just letting my eyes wander when something moved between two trees maybe a 100-yard away. It was quick, a single smooth step, but the mass of it registered. Tall, broad, dark brown. It crossed a gap between trunks in a fraction of a second and was gone, like it stepped behind a tree and either stayed there or dropped out of sight. At first, my brain said bear, because that's what you say. But the outline was wrong. It was upright and narrow. Bears, even standing, have a certain wobbly, top-heavy look. This shape looked more like a tall man wearing a huge shaggy coat. There was no swinging arm or clear head. Nothing that sharp, just an impression of height and bulk and hair. It moved like it knew exactly where to place its feet. No noise carried across. The forest there was too deep to hear the specifics. I stared at the spot for a full minute afterward, waiting for another movement. Nothing, but the hair on my arms was up. When I walked back to the group, I must have looked different because Lily stopped talking music mid-sentence and said, "What?" I almost lied, but something in her expression made me tell the truth. I said I thought I saw something big cross between the trees on the opposite slope. Not a deer, not a person, unless that person was huge. Nate immediately turned it into a joke, maybe for his own sanity. "Our boy Woodger checking us out," he said, but his mouth was tight. Chris lifted his trekking poles and did this dumb little spin like he was presenting himself to an audience. "Take a good look. Bigfoot. We taste like ramen and trail mix." None of us laughed very hard. We moved on. The rest of that day, I kept catching whiffs of that musky smell at odd moments. Sometimes it would be strong for a few seconds and then fade like whatever carried the scent had slipped through our general area and then veered off. Once when we stopped to adjust a boot, I found a long coarse hair snagged on a broken branch about 6 feet off the ground. It was dark brown with a lighter tip longer than any deer hair I'd seen and too thick to be human head hair. I showed it to Lily. She photographed it and then, for some reason, I still don't fully understand, twisted it around one of the zipper pulls on her jacket like a souvenir. We reached the bald we were aiming for in the late afternoon. It was one of those open grassy knobs that the southern Appalachians are known for, where the forest falls away and you have waist-high grass and low shrubs and a 360 view. The wind up there was constant and cold. The sky had that clear, harsh blue that comes before a hard frost. There was a designated campsite tucked just below the crest on the leeward side, with a cluster of scrubby trees offering some shelter. From our tents, we could see the ridge we'd come from, and the next few miles of our route laid out like a rolling spine. It should have felt incredible. In a way, it did, but it also felt exposed. There was nowhere to hide up there. If something came for us, we'd see it coming, but so would it see us. We set up camp, filtered water from a little trickling spring near the edge of the treeline, cooked dinner, and tried to enjoy the view. The sunset was one of those orange-purple spreads that tourists drive hours to see. The mountains layered into silhouettes, darker and darker until they blended into the night. Had lights appeared on some distant highway like fireflies. After dark, the wind picked up. It made the tent walls snap and hiss. Sparks from the campfire swirled and vanished. It was harder to separate normal wind noise from anything else. Still, after what happened later, I can say we definitely weren't alone on that bald. Sometime after midnight, again, I woke up. This time, there was no slow lead-in. I came awake to the sound of someone saying my name from outside the tent. "Hey, Tyler, that's my name." The voice was low and urgent, like someone trying to whisper-yell without attracting attention. I lay there in my sleeping bag, staring at the nylon, trying to decide if I was dreaming. Then it came again. "Tyler, come here? Man, you need to see this." It sounded exactly like Chris. Same tone, same casual draw he gets when he's excited about something. The voice came from just beyond the edge of the tent, from the uphill side, right about where his tent was set up. For half a second, I almost unzipped the door. That's the part that makes me shiver now, thinking how close I was to just poking my head out. Every hair on my body stood up at once. There was something off in the way he said it. Not the words themselves, but the rhythm, like someone was reading a line it had practiced. I realized slowly that I could hear Nate breathing next to me, and it was too quick to be sleep. "You hear that?" I whispered. His hand reached over and grabbed my forearm hard. "That's not him," he mouthed. Outside, there was a long pause. Then the voice came again, a little closer. "Tyler, hey, you awake? Come on, man." The zipper on Chris and Lily's tent had that distinct sound. We'd all heard it a dozen times already. It didn't move. No crunch of footsteps from their camp spot. No muttered cursing. Nothing. Just the wind and that voice way to calm for the situation. I raised my voice a little. "Chris," I called. My throat felt dry. "You good, man?" There was no answer for several seconds. Then the same voice, but farther away now, down the slope toward the spring, like the speaker had suddenly teleported 30 yards downhill. "Down here," it called. "You got to see this. Hurry up." People talk about cold dread like it's a cliche, but that's what it felt like. Like something let a bucket of ice water down my spine. The movement didn't make sense. No one can move that quietly and that fast on a grassy, brushy hillside in the dark without making any sound but their voice. I unzipped our tent door just a few inches slowly and peered out. The moon had risen enough to throw a bluish light over everything. I could see Chris and Lily's tent, a dark lump a few yards away. It was zipped up. No headlamps, no movement. Beyond that, the scrub trees swayed in the wind. "I don't like this," Nate whispered behind me. "Music, zip it. Zip it. Dude." Down the slope toward the spring, something moved between the low trees. I saw it as a darker shape against the darkness. Tall, wide, slightly hunched. It moved with a rolling gait, shoulders swaying, then stepped behind a clump of brush and was gone. At the same time, we heard a faint, higher-pitched laugh, like someone was badly faking amusement. It sounded almost like Lily's laugh when she was trying to be polite. Almost. I zipped the tent slowly, my fingers numb. I wanted to call out again to wake up Chris and Lily, but a part of me was terrified that whatever that thing was would focus on any sound. So, I lay there back against my pack, one hand on the handle of the little knife I kept next to my sleeping bag, and I listened. Nate did the same on his side for the next hour or so. Time is fuzzy here, but it felt like forever. That thing circled our camp. Sometimes it was uphill, moving along the ridge line. Sometimes it was downhill near the spring. Sometimes it was off to one side. We'd hear heavy steps, then silence. Once there was a loud, hollow knock like it had picked up a branch and smacked a tree in frustration. Every now and then the voice would come again, imitating one of us. It called my name twice more. It called for Nate once and that sounded like my voice. It called for Lily and Chris's voice. Each time the cadence was just a little off, the vowels stretched in the wrong spots. The emphasis in the wrong place, like someone trying to speak English after only hearing it once. At one point, it got very close to Chris and Lily's tent. I heard the soft thud of steps in the grass, then a slow scraping sound as music something brushed against their rainfly. There was a sharp intake of breath from inside their tent. Then, without warning, something gave a low, guttural sound right outside their door. It wasn't a growl exactly, but a kind of chest that vibrated in my own ribcage, even from where I lay. The sound had layers, like to voices speaking at once in slightly different pitches. I heard Lily gasp, then Chris whisper, "Jesus Christ," under his breath. The thing stood there a moment longer, then walked away down slope, shaking a sapling as it went with a loud leafy rattle. None of us slept after that. We lay there in the dark until the sky started to lighten behind the distant ridges and the shapes of trees sharpened into individual trunks again. When I finally crawled out of the tent, my legs were stiff from tension. The campsite looked normal. The fire ring was just ash. The tents were where we left them. If you didn't know better, you would have thought it was just another crisp mountain morning. Then we saw the tracks. They were all around the perimeter of our camp, just beyond where the grass was matted from our walking back and forth. Huge bare impressions in the damp soil, some partial, some full. Long, wide, mid-foot, tople at the front, no claw marks like you'd see on a bear. There were at least 2 distinct sizes, music maybe 3. One set was enormous, larger than the print we'd seen on the first day. Another was slightly smaller, but still bigger than a human's. They crisscrossed and overlapped, some close to our tents, some near the fire ring, some leading downhill toward the spring. More unsettling than the tracks were the marks on the trees. Several saplings had their tops twisted and broken about 8 feet up. Not snapped clean by wind, but twisted like someone had grabbed them and torqued until the fibers' music gave way. On one of the larger trees, just uphill from camp, there were fresh gouges in the bark about 6.5 feet off the ground. They weren't deep, but they were evenly spaced like fingers dragging. Embedded in the sap was a tuft of dark hair similar to the one we defound the day before. We all stood there looking at it. Nobody said bear this time. There was no point. Finally, Chris said, "We are getting the hell out of here today," in a voice that left no room for argument. The original plan had us doing another full day of hiking along the ridge and then dropping down through a remote hollow before looping back. Instead, we decided to cut the loop short by taking a side trail down to a Forest Service road and then hiking or hitching our way back to the car. It would still be a long day, but at least there would be a way out that didn't involve another night deep in the back country. We broke camp fast. I don't think I ever packed up that quickly before or since. There was none of the lazy breakfast routine. We ate energy bars while stuffing sleeping bags. We barely talked. The forest felt like it had its eyes open and was paying attention to every zipper and clink of metal. As we started down the side trail, I kept having the sensation that we were being paralleled. Every few minutes, I'd hear a branch snap somewhere off to the left or right, never directly behind us, always just out of clear view. That musky smell would drift by in pockets, then disappear. We tried to stick together, but the trail's ups and downs meant we'd string out a bit and then bunch up again. I made a point of keeping Lily between Nate and me, with Chris in the lead. So, we didn't have anyone right on the tail. Around late morning, the trail dropped into a narrow ravine with steep sides. The canopy closed in, the light went dim and green. The air got colder. The side trail we were on was clearly less used than the main at. The blazes were faded. Leaves covered most of the footpath. At one point, we had to navigate around a blowdown. Several big trees had come down across the trail in a tangle. While we were climbing over it, we heard a knock from up on the ridge above us, followed by another knock from farther down the ravine. Then, faintly, what sounded like a reply from behind us. It felt like there were at least 3 of them now, spaced out. I think we all realized it at the same time. Whatever this was, it wasn't just one solitary animal. It was a group, a family unit, or a troop, or whatever term you want to use. The idea of there being multiple made everything worse. One thing you can maybe start to rationalize away. A whole set of them communicating over our heads while we moved through their territory felt like something else entirely. We picked up the pace. Talking stopped. All you could hear was the crunch of leaves under boots and our breathing. The trail took a hard left at one point, and that's where we made our mistake. I still don't know if we missed a blaze or if something had tampered with the markers, but we ended up following what looked like an obvious path that slowly veered off the actual trail. At first, it didn't feel wrong. It was just a slightly narrower track, still clear of major obstacles, still leading downhill. By the time I noticed the blazes had disappeared from trees, we'd already gone a good 15 minutes on it. The woods were thicker here. The ground underfoot felt spongier, like there was more moss and duff. When I checked the map and the compass, the general direction still matched down, but something in my gut twisted. We'd stepped off the maintained route music and into whatever was behind it. "Guys," I said, stopping. "I'm not seeing any more blazes." We all looked around. The trees here were bare of paint. The path ahead faded into leaf litter. Behind us, the way we'd come was already blending back into the forest. It's amazing how quickly a trail disappears if you do and have a painted marker to anchor it in your brain. "We just follow the drainage," Chris said, pointing downhill. "Water flows to roads. We keep going down. We hit something eventually." That's a true enough piece of backcountry advice in general, but it didn't help the tight feeling in my chest. I kept thinking about the old man at the trailhead saying, "Don't go chasing voices," and wondering if this counted. The smell hit us stronger here. That same musky animal scent, only more concentrated, like whatever carried it spent a lot of time in this particular fold of land. There were more of those bent saplings, more stick structures leaning against trees. Some of the trees had rocks wedged into the crooks of their branches. It felt less like natural debris and more like we were walking into someone's weird outdoor living room. We went another 100 yards or so before we reached the clearing. Clearing might be too generous a word. It was more like a flattened hollow where several game trails converged. The ground there was bare dirt and old trampled leaves. In the center of the space was a low pile of rocks arranged in a rough circle, maybe 5 feet across. Inside the ring were bones. I'm not a biologist, and I'm not going to pretend I could identify everything I saw there, but I recognized deer bones, leg bones, a partial spine, a couple of skull fragments, antlers with the bases gnawed. Mixed in with those were smaller bones that looked like raccoon or possum. The whole thing was layered. Old bones at the bottom, dried and greenish, newer ones on top. Some still had ragged bits of tendon attached. The smell was a mix of old blood and wet dog and something I can only describe as den. There was hair scattered around, too, in clumps, deer hair and longer, darker hair, like the strands we'd found on the trail and in camp. On one side of the bone circle, there was something that made my stomach drop. A faded blue scrap of nylon that looked exactly like it had once been part of a jacket or a pack cover. Next to it was a piece of webbing with a plastic buckle still attached. You see trash in the woods, sometimes, but this didn't look like a candy wrapper someone dropped. It looked like gear that had been torn apart. Nate swore under his breath. Lily went pale. Chris said very quietly, "This is a kill site." The words hung there. Before we could decide what to do, we heard movement in the trees on the slope above us. Not just one thing this time, multiple leaves rustling, branches music flexing, the sound of something big shifting its weight from one foot to the other. I looked up and saw shapes, not fully clear, just darker vertical forms between the trunks. One of them stepped forward enough that more detail resolved. It was tall. I know people always exaggerate, but this thing had to be at least 7.5 feet, maybe music more. Broad shoulders that tapered into a thick torso, long arms that hung low, hands around mid-thigh. It was covered in dark brown hair, matted in places with a sheen where the light caught it. The head was slightly domed. The face more like a gorilla's than a human's, but flatter than you see in the movies, with a heavy brow ridge shadowing deep-set eyes. The nose was wide and flat. The mouth was closed but the jaw looked strong. The chest rose and fell slowly like it wasn't remotely out of breath. Behind it, partially obscured, I could see at least 2 more figures, shorter, but still huge by human standards. They stood in a loose, spread out formation on the slope, not lining up like soldiers, but not random either. I had the very clear impression that we were being looked at from multiple angles. We were in the center of their attention. For a few long seconds, nobody moved. The force seemed to compress into the space between us and them. My brain refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. I remember having these stupid, irrelevant thoughts like, oh, the proportions are wrong for a guy in a suit, and that hair would be miserable in summer. Fear does strange things to your thinking. One of the smaller ones made a sound. It was a series of clicks and soft grunts, fast and patterned, like it was speaking and asking the larger one a question. The big one responded with a deep rumbling noise that I felt in my chest more than heard with my ears. The others shifted slightly, but none of them advanced. They just watched. "We need to back away," Lily whispered slowly. Her voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. I realized my hands were open and held slightly out from my sides. Music palms empty, like I was unconsciously showing I had nothing in them. We took a collective step backward. The bigger one's head tracked the movement. Its eyes, dark and reflective, flicked from face to face. Our feet crunched on bones and twigs. Another step back, another. The smaller ones rearranged slightly, but still didn't come down. Then, from somewhere above and behind them, we heard a knock. Loud, sharp, and close. The big one turned its head toward the sound, then back to us. It lifted its right arm and swung it down with a fast chopping motion as it barked out a short explosive "ha" that made my ears ring. It wasn't directed at us so much as over us like a music warning shot. My knees almost gave out. Whatever that command meant, the smaller ones froze, then slowly stepped back into deeper cover. That's when the voice started up again. It came from the trees off to our left, a little lower on the slope. "Guys, wait up. Where'd you go?" It was my voice this time. My exact tone. My exact inflection from earlier that morning when I'd called to them on the trail, stopping to retie my boot. Hearing your own voice come from somewhere your body is a special kind of wrong. My stomach lurched. The thing that music had spoken pulled the words from memory and was now playing them back like a recording. The big one's gaze flicked toward the source of that voice and narrowed. It made another rumbling sound, more irritated this time. There was movement in the brush where the voice had come from, but I couldn't make out a shape. Then, like a reply, we heard Lily's voice from the other side of the clearing higher up. "Hey, look at this." She had said that exact phrase at camp when she'd found that bent sapling, all casual and amused. Here, in this context, it sounded sinister. We were caught in some kind of crossfire of sound, our own voices mirrored and thrown around the clearing while these huge hairy things watched us from the slope. I had a clear, awful image of other hikers standing where we were now, hearing voices they trusted calling them into this hollow. I saw them stepping onto that bone circle, thinking they were meeting up with a friend, only to realize too late what surrounded them. Maybe the big one thought the same thing, because whatever look it gave the brush where the voice came from made that unseen mimic fall silent. The air went very still. Then, without any obvious signal, the large figure turned away from us. It walked parallel to the slope uphill back into the trees. The smaller ones followed, melting into the forest. Within a few seconds, they were gone, their dark forms swallowed by the trunks and shadows. Just like that, we were alone, music again in the bone hollow. The smell of them lingered, heavy and animal, and something else I still can't name. Our legs didn't want to respond at first. Then adrenaline took over. None of us said a word. We just turned and scrambled back the way we'd come, climbing uphill until we found the faint suggestion of the main side trail again. It took longer than it should have, because every tree and rock looked the same. But somehow we managed to reorient and get back on track. I kept expecting to hear footsteps behind us, or another knock, or that awful mirror voice. Nothing came. The woods went back to their regular soundtrack like nothing had happened. We didn't stop for a real break until we'd been walking for over an hour, and the trail had widened and started to show fresher signs of maintenance. When we finally reached the Forest Service Road, a rutted dirt lane with gravel in the middle, I almost cried with relief. There were tire tracks. There was a faded orange gate. There was a sign with bullet holes in it. Human things. We followed the road down for miles until we hit a paved road, stuck out our thumbs, and eventually got a ride from a guy in a pickup who didn't ask many questions when four filthy white-eyed hikers climbed into his truck bed. Back at the trailhead, our cars were where we left them. The old man was nowhere to be seen. We loaded up in a kind of Dawes. It wasn't until we were halfway back to civilization music that we really started to talk about what had happened. The conversation was disjointed and defensive. Lots of "did you see and you heard that too, and I'm not crazy." Right. Chris kept trying to rationalize it. Some guys in ghillie suits messing with us. Some weird bear behavior. Whatever. But his voice shook. Lily swung between almost manic joking and complete silence. Nate stared out the window and didn't say much at all. We made an unspoken pact in the days that followed. We agreed not to tell anyone the full story. We edited it for family and co-workers. We cut the loop short because of weather. We heard something big around camp, probably a bear. We got a little turned around, but made it out. Even between ourselves, over text and calls, we avoided certain details. No one wanted to be the one to say the word Bigfoot out loud and make it real. The bone circle, the voices, the way those things looked at us like we weren't a mystery to them at all. That all went in a locked box in the back of my mind. For a few years after that, I didn't camp in real wilderness. I'd still go on day hikes, but I'd be back at the car by late afternoon. The idea of being zipped into a tent in total darkness with something big walking around outside was enough to make my hands sweat. I'd hear knocks and random noises. I'd catch whiffs of that musky smell in places it had no business being, and my heart would spike. Once when a drunk guy outside my apartment building started yelling in the middle of the night, I woke up convinced it was that thing using my neighbor's voice. Time dulls things, though. Memories soften at the edges. I started to question my own recollections. Had the figures on the slope been that big? Really? Were the voices actually that accurate? Or had my brain smoothed over the differences later? It gets easy in the safety of your living room to talk yourself out of the worst parts. The human mind wants things to be normal. The twist to this story, the part that pulled all those memories out of the box and put them back in the light, happened almost 8 years later during the pandemic. I was working from home, stuck in that weird loop of wake up, open, laptop, stare at screen for 10 hours. To keep myself sane, I took to listening to podcasts and YouTube channels while I did mindless data work. True crime, wilderness survival, cryptid stuff. It was background noise more than anything, and most of it just blurred together. One afternoon, I was listening to a Bigfoot podcast. It was one of those shows where the host interviews witnesses and plays audio clips sent in by researchers. I wasn't paying much attention at first. The guest was some guy who went squatching in the southern Appalachian, North Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, the general region. He started talking about unknown primate vocalizations, wood knocks, all the usual. Then he said he was going to play a recording he'd captured on a camping trip a couple of years earlier in a remote hollow off the Appalachian Trail in western North Carolina. My ears perked up at that. It was vague enough to be a lot of places, but still the audio was like most of those clips at first. Night sounds, crickets, wind and leaves, the faint hiss of a nearby creek. Then a knock loud and clean, another knock farther away. The host made a noise of appreciation like, "Wow, that's really clear." Then in the recording, you could hear the researchers whispering to each other. One said, "Shh, did you hear that?" Very faintly under the hiss, there was something else. A low-layered vocalization, almost like a chesty hum, and then I heard my own voice. Not just a similar voice, not just a phrase, I might have said. My voice. The clip wasn't long, but it was enough. Somewhere out in those woods on that guy's recorder, I said, "Guys, wait up. Where'd you go?" In the exact tone I remembered using when I'd lost sight of the others on the trail that third day. Same cadence, same little half laugh on the wait up. The hairs on my arms prickled. I paused the audio and replayed it 3 times in a row, leaning toward my laptop speakers like that would help. There were no other campers in the background, no obvious signs that the researcher had just accidentally recorded himself or a friend. The host didn't comment on the voice at all. He kept focusing on the knocks and the low grunts. To him, that human-sounding snippet was probably just background noise. To me, it was like hearing a recording of a private thought. I sat there breathing hard, staring at the waveform on the screen. I tried to reason my way out of it. Maybe the podcaster had edited in stock sounds. Maybe someone else out there said the exact same phrase in the exact same way. People say wait up all the time. The rational explanations felt thin. What made more sense in a way that still made me feel a little sick was that one of those things had learned our voices. It had listened to us talk as we hiked through their territory. It had picked up our speech patterns, our tones, our individual rhythms. It had stored them, and later, when some guys with recorders came through that hollow, it had played them back. I thought about the bone circle, about all those layers of deer bones and smaller creatures and that scrap of blue nylon. I thought about the missing hiker flyer at the trailhead, the one the old man had tapped. I wondered how many times these things had used that trick, calling people deeper into the trees with familiar voices. "Hey, over here, you got to see this, wait up." All the little phrases we toss to each other music without thinking that in the right setting become bait. If that's what they do, then we weren't brave survivors who made it out on grid alone. We were test subjects they let walk away. They had us dead to rights in that bone hollow. They knew exactly where we were, how scared we were, how disoriented we were. That big one could have come down the slope in 3 strides, and there wouldn't have been anything we could do. Instead, it watched us, scolded whatever was mimicking us, and then left. And now, years later, somewhere in those hills, something is still carrying my voice around in its head, dropping my words into the night whenever it suits it. I haven't told my brother, or Chris, or Lily about the audio. We've drifted like people do. We still text now and then, send each other memes, comment on old photos, but we don't talk much about that trip. Part of me thinks I should tell them that they have a right to know. Another part of me is afraid that if I pull them back into this, I'll drag those things' attention across whatever distance sits between us and that ridge. I've gone back to the Appalachian since then, but only for day hikes and always in busier sections. I stick to well-worn trails, places where you can hear other people's voices ahead and behind you. I don't camp alone. I don't go into deep hollows off the main path. I stay away from places where the blazes fade and the leaf litter starts to look the same in every direction. And I pay a lot of attention to what I hear in the woods. Recorded audio doesn't scare me as much as it should. I can always hit pause. What gets to me now are live sounds. When I'm out there and someone in my group calls my name, I make sure I can see them when they do it. If I hear a voice in the trees and I can't see a person attached to it, I don't follow it. I don't care how urgent it sounds or how familiar. I've got this rule now that I won't break. If I'm in the woods and I hear, "Hey, look at this," from somewhere I can't verify, I keep my eyes on the trail and my feet moving. It might make me look paranoid. That's fine. Every once in a while on a windy night, I lines be half asleep in my apartment and I lines hear the building creak or someone slam a door in the hallway, and my brain will twist it for just a second into the echo of my own voice calling, "Guys, wait up. Where'd you go?" I lie there in the dark listening to my heart pound and I think about that bone circle in the hollow and the eyes watching us from the slope. I think about the fact that there are places in those mountains where the trees are close and the hollows are deep and the cell service doesn't reach. I think about how those old ridgelines have been there longer than any of our maps or trail registers or podcasts, and that whatever lives there, whatever listens and learns and remembers doesn't care if we believe in it. I don't know why we got to walk away. Maybe we were too much trouble. Maybe we weren't what they wanted that day. Maybe that big one looked at us, weighed something we'll never understand, and decided to let us go with a warning instead of a lesson. All I know is that right now, somewhere in the southern Appalachian, there's a patch of ground where bones still pile up, and if you stand there long enough in the dark, eventually you'll hear a familiar voice drift through the trees, just close enough to make you take that first step off the trail. If you ever find yourself out there and you hear someone you know call your name from the shadows, do yourself a favor. Count the heads you can see. Look at the ground before you look at the trees. And if anything about it feels wrong, even a little, don't answer, because I'm telling you this as plainly as I can. Some things in those mountains are listening when you talk, and they remember you. Even if you've forgotten them, they haven't forgotten you. I've been living out here in the Appalachian Mountains for most of my life, and I always thought I knew what to expect once the sun went down. Coyotes yipping in the distance, maybe a black bear rustling around. Nothing much shakes me, but on this night, everything changed. Let me start by saying my evening had been uneventful. Just chores and a quick dinner before midnight rolled around. Jax, my retriever, was curled up by the fireplace like he always is. He's the most relaxed dog on the planet, rarely even barks unless the mailman shows up. That's why I nearly dropped my coffee when I heard this growl coming from him. Deep and raw, unlike anything I'd heard before. I glanced at him and saw he was standing rigid, hackles raised, eyes fixed on the window. I couldn't see anything but my own reflection in the glass, and I tried to shrug it off, mumbling something like, "Easy, buddy," but inside, I was rattled. I've never seen Jax look that tense. Tail stiff, nose practically glued to the window. It was enough to get my heart pounding. Soon I realized I still had to lock up my workshop down the slope behind the house. Normally, this isn't a big deal, just a quick trip in the dark with a flashlight. But the way Jax was acting, let's just say I was on edge. Still, I convinced myself it was no big deal. I grabbed my coat, clicked on the flashlight, and headed out. Jax insisted on coming, practically pressing against my leg with every step. Outside, the air felt strange. I couldn't place why. Maybe it was too still. No crickets, no whine through the branches, just a heavy quiet. Halfway to the workshop, Jax let out another warning growl that made my stomach tighten. Before I could turn on my heel, I noticed the workshop door was slightly open, even though I was sure I'd closed it earlier. My chest felt tight, but I forced myself to keep going. I tugged the door shut and locked it. And that's when this insane commotion erupted in the woods behind me. I can't fully do the sound justice, but it was like a sudden surge of noise tearing through the undergrowth. Branches snapping, leaves crunching, almost like a crowd sprinting among the trees. I froze and Jax just pressed against me, teeth bared. Whatever caused that ruckus had to be larger than a raccoon or fox. It sounded massive. My hands were shaking so badly that I fumbled with the flashlight, nearly dropping it. I backed up toward the house, trying not to break into a sprint, though my legs were begging me to run. The closer we got to the porch, the more frantic everything felt. I got inside, practically shoved the door shut and slid the deadbolt into place. My brain was racing, trying to explain what I just heard. A bunch of deer, a bear with cubs. But it was so loud, so widespread, like multiple creatures. I stood in the hallway, breath hitching, Jax at my feet, staring at the door. I realized I'd left my pistol upstairs. Adrenaline was making my hands tremble. My pulse hammered as I rushed to my bedroom, grabbed the gun, and made sure it was loaded. I've never felt so desperate to be armed in my own home. Just as I debated whether to investigate or hide, Jax let out a bark. That bark, he only does that when something's seriously wrong. So, against every instinct, I headed back out onto the porch with my flashlight and pistol. My chest was tight, my breathing uneven, but I needed to know if there was an intruder or some animal messing around. I scanned the tree line with the beam. Nothing moved. Silence reigned almost unnaturally, as though nature itself took a step back, waiting to see what I'd do next. Then, just as I was about to turn and go inside, I heard this low murmur, more like a swarm of hushed voices than a single sound. It came from the very edge of my property, out near where the trees thickened. My stomach dropped. It didn't sound like English, but it was disturbingly close to speech. Jax whimpered, tail tucked as if he wanted to drag me inside. I couldn't see anything, but it felt like eyes were on me, a presence both everywhere and nowhere. The murmur seemed to shift direction, echoing out from multiple spots at once. My light swept across the yard, revealing not one silhouette, not one flicker of movement. Yet, the voices, if that's what they were, didn't stop. A wave of nausea hit me so hard I thought I might collapse right there on the porch. I forced myself to breathe through it, whispering Jax's name for a shred of comfort. After what felt like ages, I managed to pull myself back inside. That door had never felt so flimsy. I latched it and checked the windows, too spooked to turn on any indoor lights, hoping that darkness would hide me. The night wasn't over, though. I had a terrible feeling this was only the beginning, like whatever was out there wasn't done with me. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just dealing with some random animal. This felt orchestrated, purposeful, and it was tightening around me step by step. I didn't have a clue what was causing it, but I knew one thing for sure. My home, my safe space was no longer secure. Jax's instincts had been, right from the start, and I dreaded what might be next. I had barely closed my eyes for a second, couldn't rest even if I tried, with every nerve in my body on high alert. Jax was tense, pacing the living room and refusing to leave the front door. I kept the lights off, thinking somehow it would make me less of a target. My phone sat on the table, but out here in the middle of nowhere, good luck trying to call for help. Even if I did get a signal, what could I possibly say to emergency services? Hello? Yes, there are voices surrounding my house, and I don't see anyone, but my dog is freaking out. That weird muttering from outside seemed to vibrate through the walls, like a low chorus of whispers just behind the wooden panels. It was maddening because I couldn't single out a phrase or identify if it was even human speech. It rose and fell in waves, and every so often it almost sounded like chanting. I guess. I was too rattled to be sure. All I knew was that my gut told me there were multiple presences out there. More than one set of footsteps had circled the house after I first came inside. After another minute of pacing, I finally thought, screw it. I need to see what's happening. I edged over to the window beside my front door, careful not to rustle the curtains. The instant I leaned forward, the noise outside cut off, like someone hit a switch. In its place was the deepest, most all-consuming silence. Not a single insect chirping, no rustle of leaves, just my own ragged breathing. I can't express how unsettling it is to realize that whatever's out there knows when you move. The second I froze, I heard a slight shuffle near the corner of the house. Then that quiet murmuring started back up again, more agitated than before. I grabbed my pistol from the coffee table and quietly approached another window that looked out toward the gravel driveway. Jax followed, ears down and tail stiff, as if he expected an attack. When I shifted the curtain a millimeter, the mumbles faded out again. Something was definitely keyed into every movement I made, and that realization caused my stomach to churn. Time dragged on. I checked my phone. 1:47 a.m. It had only been an hour since I'd first heard that thunderous crashing in the woods, but it felt like half the night had passed. I decided to kill the darkness with a chance at visibility, so I clicked on the porch light. Nothing in the yard. No bodies, no shapes, not even a stray raccoon. My flashlight remained on the table, but I felt no urge to go out there again. A part of me sensed if I opened that door, I'd be swallowed whole. Jax's eyes stayed locked on the windows. Now and then, a single footstep crunched the gravel outside, slow and deliberate. One step, pause, another step, pause. It was unbearable not to open a window and yell, but I couldn't bring myself to be that reckless. My mind kept thinking back on old stories from my grandparents about things in the hills that weren't exactly animal and not quite human either. Tales I'd once dismissed as pure folklore. But here I was feeling cornered by something I couldn't see. To keep myself sane, I jotted notes on a pad. What times I heard the footsteps, what they sounded like, how the whispering seemed to move around the property in a clockwise pattern. Once or twice, I considered switching on music or the TV just to drown it out. But a voice in my head told me to stay alert, not to mask the sounds. After all, if something crashed through the door, I needed to know instantly. Hours crawled by this way. My nerves were shot, my hands clammy, and every muscle ached with tension. I found myself drifting off, only to jolt awake seconds later whenever Jax twitched. It was like living on a fault line, expecting the earth to quake at any moment. Meanwhile, the murmurs persisted outside, underscored by that dead silent hush whenever I tried to move. It was a twisted game. They made sure I knew they were there, but not once did I see a face or a form. Sometime around 4:30 or maybe closer to 5 a.m., the tone of the murmuring changed. Hard to explain, but the pitch went lower, almost guttural. Then slowly the sound started drifting away deeper into the woods. I caught faint rustling through the thick brush, then a final few snaps of branches. In their wake, frogs croaked and a couple of birds called. It was as if the natural world had been stifled all night and finally breathed again. Relief washed over me, but it wasn't that comforting. I still felt like I might vomit from the stress. I checked each window for any sign of movement. Nothing. The gravel driveway looked untouched, aside from my own footprints. Jax gradually relaxed, though he wouldn't lie down until the first pale light of dawn crept across the horizon. Once I was fairly certain the immediate threat had disappeared, I stepped outside onto the porch for a breath of air, pistol clutched tight in my hand. The yard was a mess of broken branches, and the lingering smell of disturbed soil clung to the morning breeze. Yet, bizarrely, there were no footprints, no trace of a crowd or gang of animals. The only proof was in my shaking limbs and Jax's Raj stare. I spent sunrise going back and forth, mentally replaying each horrifying moment. My place still felt uneasy, like the echoes of those voices might start up again any second. I didn't dare pack up and leave. Part of me needed to know if this was a one-time nightmare or an ongoing threat. I downed 2 cups of coffee, watched the brightening sky, and told myself I'd figure out what to do next. For now, daylight was my only shield, and I was not about to let my guard down. Jax and I sat there in a haunted silence, expecting something to reemerge, hoping that it wouldn't. Sunrise brought the faintest sense of relief, yet my nerves still buzzed with every stray sound. I locked the doors, sealed every window, and tried to make sense of what had just happened, but nothing about it fit neatly into the realm of normal. Part of me wanted to believe that it was some freak incident, maybe a collective hallucination brought on by stress. Still, the unease in my chest whispered that whatever took up residence in the darkness that night is out there, lurking beyond the edges of reason, waiting for another moment to slip back into my world. For now, I've recounted every detail here, hoping to warn others. Sometimes the eerie stories we dismiss might be truer than we're willing to admit. I've been drawn to the Appalachian region for as long as I can remember. Something about those towering slopes and shadowy hollows always felt like a gateway into a different world. Beautiful, yet laced with an unsettling aura that's tough to articulate. A few friends and I decided to head out to Holly River State Park in West Virginia. Lured by rumors of an old family cemetery hidden up on a ridge, we had only a vague idea of where it might be. All we knew was that we needed to follow a winding trail that cut through dense undergrowth before climbing up toward this rumored graveyard. So, the three of us piled into my car early that morning, excited by the prospect of a day hike. The drive itself was so quiet that we began making offhand jokes, like something was waiting out there, just beyond view. Maybe it was nerves talking, or maybe I'd had too much coffee. Either way, my stomach churned in that weird way it does when you're both excited and half spooked. When we arrived, the parking lot near the main trailhead had a few vehicles, but we didn't cross paths with any actual people. The entire place seemed deserted. We shrugged, figuring everyone must have already started their morning treks. After all, Holly River is a decently sized park. Folks could be scattered across countless trails. I tried to keep my mind on the gorgeous landscape, moss-covered stones, towering hardwoods, and the occasional chirp of a distant bird. Yet, there was this hush underneath it all, like nature had dialed itself down a notch. We kicked off our hike around midday. The sky was overcast, so the light filtering through the branches came in muted, silvery patches. The trail was pretty well worn at first, so we made quick progress. The chatter between us died off once we noticed how oddly calm the forest felt. Everything about the place demanded our attention, from the tangled roots underfoot to the looming canopy overhead. Occasionally, we'd catch snatches of movement in our peripheral vision. Maybe squirrels, but the scuttling always stopped the moment we tried to look closer. My friend commented that it seemed like the place was sizing us up, and nobody argued. We pressed on, climbing steadily. Eventually, we left the official trail in search of that old graveyard. The path we followed was more of a half-remembered rumor than a marked route. A fallen tree forced us to detour through thick brush, and my arms got scratched up enough that I started wishing we'd picked an easier day hike. Still, I couldn't help feeling compelled to keep going. There was a raw, ancient feel to the land that I couldn't let go of. A couple hours in, the terrain turned steep. Loose stones threatened to send us sliding if we weren't careful, and we had to cling to exposed roots for stability. We nearly missed the cemetery altogether, spotting it only because of a warped iron gate that caught the corner of my friend's eye. A row of leaning tombstones stood beyond, the lettering on them faded and chipped. If I didn't know any better, I'd say they'd been here for centuries. Up close, the graveyard gave off an atmosphere that bordered on oppressive. The headstones bore names we could barely read, and the ground was covered in tangled weeds.